cool. Can you see me? Says live, but I get my picture. There we go. Alright. So I just wanted to cover some things. Alright, so I just wanted to cover some things to do with your forest scenes and how to get these more realistic. I've just done a quick render here. This is the grass I did earlier, and I've thrown in 4 Evermotion trees. And then I've just clicked render to see what it'll look like. And there's nothing really wrong with these trees as such. You know, you can see the sun is hitting the side here, and you get a little bit of shadow going on there. But the problem is that the textures are created by different artists to the people that have created the textures for the grass, and they're created from images from different times of year, right? That's just the way it is. So what we have to look at when we're creating realism with trees in Creono using or in V-Ray using forest is the time of year that the images were taken. That's mainly what it is. You also have other additional points which have been added to create variation, which you don't particularly like, which is which camera was used to take the photos or if they were scanned, and these all add color aberration to whatever the images that you end up with. For example, if you look here at grass in spring, you're going to see this bright green color, right? And if you look at grass in summer, you see it gets a bit darker, it gets a little bit more yellow. And if you look at, you know, sometimes it gets even completely dry. But grass in autumn is going to be much darker. And the same goes for trees. If you look at trees in spring, I mean, yeah, you get a lot of blossom in spring, but also you get these very green, bright leaves. And these are how leaves look in spring. And then you've got trees in the summer, and by summer the leaves have darkened a little bit, and by autumn, of course, you get a lot of variance in color in autumn. But I mean, maybe if we do green trees in autumn, you know, you get a lot of yellow starting to come in. So they stop being so bright. I mean, apart from this one, but they stop being as bright, and you start getting a lot of variation coming in, a lot of darkness coming in. You know, everything's getting ready for the winter, and the trees now have been there throughout the entire summer. So the color's been changing. And then I wanted to show you this picture particularly here, because here you have a meadow. Let's go back. Here you have a meadow, and let's see, open image in new tab. And the trees, the fir trees here are incredibly dark, right? But see these trees here in the bottom, these are quite nice and green. Now I would say this is like early summer, maybe even towards mid to late summer. But here you've got these different colors in the flowers, and you've got these, you know, swaths of color here and here. And but the main thing is these trees, this is so dark, and these ones are so light. So that's kind of what we're looking at when we're looking at creating realism here. Now here, obviously, these should be really light, these leaves, and these are a bit dark for what they are. Even these tree trunks here are darker than they should be. Now I've got an LUT on here making this brighter, so I'm going to turn that off. You can see it instantly gets darker, and instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in just so I can get more of a realistic idea of what I'm working on here, and how this looks. And I'm just going to open the material editor, and I'm just going to adjust the light. Where is it? I think it's not there, but if I come in here, I can press 8, or I can just come in here to, sorry, not customize, rendering, click on environment, and just drag this over, and then double click on this guy, and I can turn this up. Now in order to see what's happening, I'm just gonna come into the scene and start interactive, and then we're just gonna come in here and just make this brighter, you know, just so we can get some more realistic sun. And I want to have the shadows to be a bit stronger, so I'm going to drop this inverse gamma down to like 0.85. I don't want it to be too hard. You know, let's push everything, all the brightness up. So I'm probably going to leave this as it is. And then we're just going to work on these trees and get the color coming into these trees. And I can zoom in a bit just so we can get a better idea on this interactive rendering, because it likes to do it, you know, low quality. Just go 2D pan zoom mode, and then I can just zoom in on the trees, and you see the green is starting to come through now that the sun is better. But still, you know, the grass and the trees don't match up. So in order to get these to match up, what we're going to have to do is just open these in the material editor, you know, select the tree and then just go material, get from selected, and that brings it in. And then I can instantly start seeing what it is that I'm working with. So this is the bark. This looks like another bark. Let's just have a look here at this. Yeah, this is the base of the tree. And this is the leaf here. So, you know, there's two ways to do this. I'm going to go the easy way. You can either open it in Photoshop, or you can just add in, you know, this is incredibly reflective and has a very high bump. It has a high bump because I've converted the material from V-Ray to Corona. You know, if you just right click in a viewport, you can click Corona Converter and then just start conversion, and it converts the materials, but it doesn't do it all correctly, so you have to go in afterwards and edit it. So I'm just going to try it here in this viewport to start with, and actually I'm just going to concentrate on this tree a bit because there's other there's other changes I want to show you on this. So let's just start interactive again. And what we're going to do here is just take this. Let's see. The bump here, you can see the bump is too high here in this image. If I come in here to the bump and I go into my advanced options, into the maps, and just come down to bump, this is way too high. I want this to be about 0.5. And the next thing which I want to do is take this, let's make it a little bit less reflective. So the glossiness is 0.8. We can leave that actually at 0.8. The reflection is completely the map. And so this is the map here. What we're going to do is just darken this. And there's various ways to do this. So I'm just going to take color correction, drag it in here, double click on this guy, advanced, and just drop this down to about 0.7 or 0.75, something like that, just to reduce the reflection of it so it's not as reflective as it was. And then this color, so we're going to just again use color correction in here, and I want to increase this, like let's make it 1.3. Let's just see, like if I set this up at 3, it should get really pale. See, it just looks unreal. So, but let's try 1.5. Oops, 1.5. And we're looking at something like this. Now, of course, I can make the sun brighter, right? But I think I kind of like it. I want to increase the saturation a bit. If I bump this up, you can see I get more of those spring colors coming in. And you need to pay attention to how it renders as opposed to how it looks in the viewport, right? Because it's looking like this, but it's rendering like this. And you can turn off this curves. So there's no LUT, there's no curves, there's no color correction going on here. This is just straight out of the box, how the render looks compared to how it looks here, right? Now, this is probably a little bit much, so we're just going to turn that down a little. Alright, so what I really want to show you here, and the main point which I'm using in order to create more realism, because we're going to use forest to scatter a bunch of these trees around. And the problem is that they're all going to have the same color, right? So the way I like to change it is, again, if you saw the grass tutorial I did earlier today, I'm going to use noise. And if I just put this into diffuse, so you can see what's happening. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to push this low and high, because like if I push this up to about the size it needs to be, which is probably something like 3000, you can see bits of darkness and bits of light, but it's not clear what's what, right? But if I lower this down to 0.5 and push this one here up to 0.4, let's say 49, then you can start to see, you know, massive differences here. And let's, you know, I can just adjust these actually. Let's do point. It's because it's mainly black, right? I don't want it to be so. Actually, let's reduce this down. Let's try 1500. Yeah. So here now we're looking at variation. You can see the white and the black. So we're going to use this as a mask, right? And the way we do this is we take a composite map. And what we're going to do is plug this into layer 1. And then, let's see, just add in an extra layer here. And layer 2, we're just going to take this color correction, drag this down, put this into layer 2, and then change this. And to start with, just to make sure this is working, I'm going to, let's bring this down to 0.1, just to make it black, right? And we're going to put this into diffuse, and we're going to use this as the mask. So let's take this noise and put this in as the mask. And now you can clearly see how this is working, right? And then what we're going to do is just double click on this, and I think this one here was at 1.5, right? So we don't need to have a massive difference, okay? We can just take this guy and we can put it at, let's try 1.1, and it's just going to make this a little bit darker than this. But the point is it's adding in variation. It's adding in a change of color. Now the other thing which we can do is I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to take the same noise, and I'm just going to do this again. And if I wanted to get really, you know, something looking realistic, I would do this 2 or 3 times. And I don't, you know, I can click on fractal, for example, to get a different noise map, or I can change the phase instead. You know, if you change this, you'll see this all change around as well. So, and then I'm just going to reduce this down. Let's try 1000. Let's try 500. And I don't want to have as much, right? So here, I don't want to put like a color where all this white is, because it's just going to override a lot of what I've done here to create this change. So I want to have less white going on here. So I'm going to take this, and I've got to just play with these two, right? So this high can go up to like 0.7, and this low can go up to like 0.69. And what I'm looking for is little areas of white. Like if I come in here, do I have them here? You know, you can't really see it very well, so a good idea is to take this and change it to a color we can see, like red. Oops, that wasn't one. That's the wrong one. Okay, go back to white. This one here, right? This one, red. So now you can see where it's affecting it. And I probably want a little bit more than that, so let's try 6, 5. I can even maybe try 6, you know. But I think that's okay. So we're going to make this white again, because we're going to use it as a mask and we want it showing through. And then what we're going to do is plug this in, add in an extra layer on the composite, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to do a similar thing I did to the grass earlier. Take this color, and I'm going to actually make this really light, and I'm going to desaturate this a bunch and put this into layer 3, and then use this as the mask. And so now we have some variation in this tree, which, you know, if you look, you might question, like, where is the variation? But it's there. And that's always the important thing with realism. It's a lot of variation that you don't particularly notice, but your eye picks up on, and it just looks more real. You know, you're like, what have you done that's different? A lot of people aren't going to know, but it's going to look a lot better. So we're going to use this to scatter. We're just going to do the same changes in these other trees, but I'll do these much quicker. Maybe I'll even steal this setup here, and then I'll just move it over and change the sizes of these and so on. So let's see if I pick the material from this one. Oh, and then also I probably want to do the bark, right? Is that bark okay? I think that bark's okay, actually. So what are we doing? I'm not sure what this is. I can guess. What color is the diffuse color? Green. Oh, let's just check. The map's 100% on the diffuse, so it's only using the map there. Let me just make this purple, and then just disable the map, and I can just see what this is. I don't see anything, right? Okay, let's make it like, I don't know, blue or something. Bright blue. Oh, there we go. Okay. So some of these leaves, and this is going to be another leaf and another leaf. So what they've done is they've got these 4 leaves, and they've made slightly different color maps, right? You can view this. You can view this. So this is what they've done in order to create a variation in the leaves, right? Exactly what I've done. They've just come in and they've given these all different numbers, and they've just put different materials on each. So that's another way to do it. But still, even with this, at a distance, all the trees are going to look the same. So let's re-enable this map. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Let's re-enable the diffuse map. And like I said, let's just grab this. I'm just going to press Shift and click on here and drag this over. And sometimes what I like to do, because I'm doing it this way, is I can just take one of these, and I can just, you know, instead of having all these different maps, I can just take this guy and put him into all of them. And then I can use these maps in place of, you know, having the color correction. So I can just come along, like, let's see how this guy looks on here. So we're looking at that, and if I pull back a bit, where are you? I don't like this. Okay. So I want to actually make this guy a bit bigger, so I'm just going to shift and drag that up. And let me, oh, I thought this was at 3000. Put that at 3000. And let's just put it in here. Yeah, okay, great. So we've got that. And what we're going to do is plug this into the layer 2 mask. And where are we? Okay, this one here. I hope this doesn't get too confusing. So it's real simple, right? We've got this composite, and we're using the composite to get these maps into this material, and I'm using the noise maps to show where this map needs to go. So this one here is going into layer 1, and then layer 2 is going to be this color, which is slightly different, and then we've got, yeah, 4 of them, right? So 3 and 4. So this is going to go into layer 3, and I'm just going to make an extra one here. An extra layer, that is. Okay, and this is going to go into layer 4. Alright. So I've got this one here showing this is where, in the white, so this is going to go where the black is, and this one is going to go where the white is here. And then I'm going to take this map, and we're going to use this. We're going to reduce the amount of white, but we're going to use this to go into the mask for layer 3. And let me just reduce that white by pushing the high up. 0.6, 0.59. So you can still see the white there. Actually, I can come down a bit. Let's try 5.5. This is going to have to be 0.459, yeah. So this is where that's going to be. And then the layer 4 mask is going to be this one. Which is this. You can see bits of white. It's just going to show through in those little areas. So we're going to take this as the layer 4 mask. Alright. And then if I plug this in here, we get all of this variation happening in this tree. And again, it's not something that you can clearly see, but it is happening there. Right? And I'm going to have to adjust this grass because this grass is just, in my mind, it's a little bit too light, right? And I want it to be a little bit more brighter, a little bit more early, kind of summery. All right. And I want to adjust these colors because these colors are very similar, and I want to actually see some change. So I am going to use color corrections in these, and just so you can see what we're doing, I'll make these really bright at first, and then I'll make them dark again. So we've got this guy here, and go on advanced, and I'm just going to click on this, turn this up to 10. Hey Stefan. The CPU, I'm using AMD Threadripper, the one with 32 cores. And why I stopped using V-Ray? Right now, it's not so much that I've stopped using it, I just find Corona is easier for me to use right now. And also with this, with the interactive rendering in Corona, with this Threadripper, it makes it very easy to work with. You know, I can just instantly see the result, and then I can just play with my scene, and I can just change it around. Whereas with V-Ray, I know they do have something similar, but it's not nearly as good, it's not nearly as easy to use. So that's why I'm using Corona rather than V-Ray right now. But I'm sure I will be going back to V-Ray and doing some more tutorials in V-Ray as well. I think they're both great, right? They're both very similar render engines in my mind when in the results that they get. Okay. So if I look at this, I just want to show you where this map's going to go. Sorry, by that I mean like where it's going to show here on this tree. So I can just probably pull this guy over, or I can turn its gamma up or down. Yeah, there you go. You see, you can immediately see. Let's just try 10. Should just be 10 should be bright enough to get it pretty white, right? So we can see where this color is. And yeah, you can use it. We can use this hue shift to just shift it around a bit, and then take this gamma and contrast down. Let's try, I don't know, 2. I don't want to go too bright because this is like a fir tree kind of thing, so I'm more likely to take a lot of them and go a little bit darker. 1.5. Like this guy, I can actually delete these now. I don't need these anymore, and they're just a bit confusing. Alright, so this guy here, again, we're going to just use color correction. And I'm going to make this one really dark to start with. So if I click on advanced, and then just drop this down 0.1. and we can see immediately what that's doing. So we're going to go, let's just put it at like 0.9, and then just, oh, I did not mean to do that. Let's just drag this down, and just replace it that way. Again, if we just have a look here, see how dark this is going to be. Oh, sorry, where this is going to be, not how dark it's going to be. 0.1. So of course you can make this variation less if you like. You know, we can see here where this darkness is happening, and I'll make this 1.1, make this one a bit brighter, and then the next one I'm just going to put that at 0.8. Just take another color correction in here. Obviously every time I do one of these it has to, you know, restart the render, so it's just pausing for a second while it does that. And this should just be in tiny little pockets. This, like, we shouldn't see this very much. Yeah, exactly. This is just in tiny areas. So I'm going to put this at 0.85. And all we're doing is just creating some randomization there. So that's that one done, right? And again, I think the, you know, the bark on all of these I think is pretty good. Looks pretty nice. Now the other thing is going to be this bump here is going to be way too high, so we're just going to reduce that down. Again, that's just because I you know, I converted the scene from V-Ray to Corona. Even that's too high actually. Let's do 0.5, something like that. Yeah, V-Ray, the bump is much higher than needed in Corona, I find. I mean, I'm using millimeters, so maybe that changes if you're using, you know, if you're using centimeters or another measurement. I'm not sure, as your unit. Okay, so material, get from selected. And this is the third one, this is this one here. It's still fir tree. So again, that's bark, this is bark. This, I guess, is one of these, needle color. So they've just done exactly the same thing. So we're just going to do exactly the same thing as well. And by that I mean I'm just going to take this map, and this map, and I'm going to delete these. And I'm trying to do this quickly now just to show you. I can change this bump amount now. Let's do 0.5. And I'm going to steal my work over here earlier. Just drag this. And I'm just going to change these as 1. You know, these could be exactly the same maps, I'm not sure. But it's quicker for me to just drag and put these on than to have a look. And then just take this and put this into here, and then I don't want this to merge, you know, with the other one, with the one next to it, and look the same. What's going on? Oh, because these have got it's not in there. Just put these over. 4, 5, 6. Alright, you can see the change here in the color and so on. So, you know, maybe that change is too much for me. I think that's from this first one here where we played with the hue as well. So if I push this hue back, a lot of this variation here should disappear. Yeah, so that's kind of helped the colors get more together. And then the other thing which we're going to do is I'm just going to change these slightly. I'm just going to increase all of them by 500. And that'll just mean that if the trees sit close to each other, the map is not going to overlap them. Because also, I'll show you on the next tree actually, just so you can see. The next tree is going to just take a little bit longer. Let's put this at 1000. Okay. Alright, so we've just increased that just so the maps on these two trees are not identical, so they don't overlap. And by overlap, what I mean is, if I take this tree, that's the last one, and I just go material, get from selected. Okay, and then again, this is the bark. This is one leaf, right? This is another leaf, this is another leaf, and I guess this is more bark, probably yeah, this is the trunk. Okay, so let's just, oops, let's just bring these over. And I'm just going to take this one noise map here to show you exactly what I mean. So let's put this into here, and I'm going to put this material here into all of these. Just bring it down, zoom in a bit, makes it easier for me. Okay. So obviously you can see here what this is doing, right? But let's say I take this tree and I just press shift and drag and make a duplicate next to it and make this an instance. So you see what we're getting is we're getting identical noise maps here, right? And so even though the trees have been moved, they're going to look exactly the same. So what we need to do is, instead of, this is on object XYZ, right? And if I change this to world XYZ, you see it changes. And so now the trees are different. But if I move the tree, the problem with this, if I move the tree, then the whole map changes, right? And so if you're going to have animation and leaves moving, this isn't going to work. But if you don't have animation, you know, then this works. So, and this is really what I'm sort of after, is I want to see this change. So before I forget, I better just come in here quickly and change these all to world. Otherwise, I mean, I'm just going to stop this interactive rendering for a second. Otherwise, when I go to render later, they're all just going to be, come on. World. They're all just going to look identical, and obviously we don't want that. So let me just make this world. Come on. World. World. And almost done. Okay. So now that's correct on all of the trees that we have. Alright, so you can see here what we're after. We're after a lot of change in the trees in the forest scene, right? And we're after a simple way to get that change. So what have I got? So again, we're going to take these. I'm just going to use these same maps. The rest of these maps on these are, I believe they look to me all the same. You know, these I'm sure are identical to these and are identical to these. Personally, I would make each one have slightly different reflection and so on if I was doing it this way. But alright, so we're going to use this, and we're going to come along and we're going to do exactly the same again. Maps, general, composite, right? Layer 1. Plug that in there. And now we can see this is, you know, it is very reflective, right? And I kind of like it because it's reflecting a lot of the sky. And you can see this, you know, this isn't grey, this is just how reflective they've made these leaves. But I think it's a little bit too much. So yeah, the IORs here is up at 2. I'm going to drop this down to 1.6. And then the glossiness is up at 1. I'm not sure if it's completely the map. Yeah, it's completely the map. So what we can do is just come in, bring a color correction in. I mean, another way, again, I could just drop this IOR down further. That would be another way of doing it. But we're going to do this and just make this a bit darker. And then the glossiness, you know, it's looking like this now, right? The glossiness is, oh, hang on. Yeah, it's because of this translucency color, right? That's the problem here. It's the translucency color, not the reflection. Because look, if I take this and put this on as the translucency color, it's going to instantly change to be completely green. So let me just come along and change that back. Let's try this back up at 2 and get rid of this color correction. So, you know, this is quite dark, right? Especially from looking earlier at these different trees that we had. You know, trees. Obviously these are spring trees. I'm going more for sort of summer trees, but these are like this, right? They're still quite bright. The trees that we're seeing there are more like late autumn and even darker. So we need to definitely brighten this up a lot. So color correction goes straight into here. And you could take this into Photoshop, right? And do it that way and just brighten it. And if I had a lot of time, I would probably do that. If I was just playing around, I'd probably just take it into Photoshop and play with each of the maps. But it's going to add on hours if you do that. If you go in Photoshop and edit everything in Photoshop, it's a lot of extra time that you're adding in. It's just too bright, right? 3. Even 2. I'm just going to push the saturation up as well. And again, now this becomes very, very yellow here, right? So I'm just going to play with this hue shift slightly. And now it's much greener, right? But it's sort of a little bit too much. Pull this back. Let's just put a lot of blue in there. By just shifting it a little bit, it gets a lot of extra blue. And let's try 1.7. I think that'll be okay. And then I've got this, so we're going to just make 4 extra layers. 2, 3, 4. I'm not going to delete the stream, Crypto. Don't worry about it. And then I'm going to just plug this here into layer 2 mask. And we need this guy, right? So I'm just going to take the same color correction I used earlier. That way I don't have to redo all of the settings and put this into layer 2. Because this is already a different color, right? So even though it has the same settings, it's still going to be a different color. And again, if we just want to see how much of a change this is, you know, if I bring this down to, I'm going to adjust this gamma anyway, but If I put this down at 1 should be low enough to see that change. I actually like that. I really like that. That's a lot of difference in color, but I think it looks great, right? You can see here it's much darker, here it's much lighter. Okay, and then I'm going to take this noise and I'm just going to adjust the size of this. Let me put this down to 2000. And now again, I need to just make sure I'm not overriding everything which I've done, right, with the next colors. You know what I mean? Like if I put it on here, the color's gonna come through on the white, and suddenly all of that work that I've done to get the variation, a lot of it's gonna be lost just by this new color, and this is gonna be on 50% of the tree. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to push this high up to 6 and a low up to 0.59. And now it's only going to appear in these white places here. And I'm just going to do the next one afterwards as well. And this one I want to have appear in even fewer places. And I probably want to have it slightly smaller. Let's do 1500. And do this high at 0.8. I'm not sure if we're going to see it. And 0.79. And just so we can see if we see it, I'm going to change this white to, I could do any color, but it just needs to be bright, right? So you can't see anything, right? So the chances are that it's not there. So the reason you're seeing green here, you're probably zooming in and you're like, how's he got green? That's because of the translucency. Remember, we put this map down here into the translucency color. And that's what this green is coming, where this green's coming through from. So we need to get this red just showing slightly, so we're just going to reduce this down until it starts to show. So I'm going to just go one at a time, so at 0.7. And we've got a tiny bit coming through here, right? So we don't need to go much lower. Maybe let's try 0.65. We've got that, and I'm not going to drop lower than 0.62. Okay, so that's good. So that's the last one, and let's go make this white because we want it to show. Like if I leave it at red, you know, it's not going to show 100%. It's only going to show in like 50%, if that makes sense, because red is a kind of, you know, if you make it grayscale, it's going to be kind of grayish, so it's only going to show through a bit. So white's going to ensure it shows through completely in the white areas. Alright, so take this, put this into diffuse color. And then I'm going to just chuck these maps in. It's layer 3. Layer 4 mask. And let's just take, shift and drag this down just to make a copy. Just plug this straight in here and put this straight into layer 3. And I'm just going to do the same with this one, this darker one, and just shift and drag that and plug this into layer 4. I might end up making this a bit lighter afterwards, but here you go. So now we've got variation in the trees, and it's kind of a brighter, much brighter green than it was, right? And now we have this grass from earlier, so where was that? Oh, here we go. So this was my grass map from earlier, grass material. Alright. I'm just going to see if I take this off. Yeah, that just disappears completely, right? So basically, even though we have these different materials, it's only really using this first one. So this grass is just too yellow. And again, if we look back at these images I looked at the beginning of the stream, you know, you've got grass in spring, and you've got, which is really bright, almost fluorescent, right? And then you've got grass in summer, which is, you know, it gets much greener, much more like this. But it's also, obviously, we don't want the dried out dead grass, right? But you've got, it's just slightly darker, really. And then grass in autumn starts getting all of these, you know, oranges and yellows and just this other color. So what we want to do, you know, this is very much an autumn kind of grass. I might brighten these up afterwards. But what we want to do here is just come along and let's see. This was my noise map. This was from the earlier tutorial. If you missed it, it's on my stream. I streamed it earlier today. So this is where the color I used, instead I used noise maps to add in color, right? So here, let me just disable layer 2 and layer 3. Just see what we have. So we have that. And that's this. This is translucency color. So what we're going to do is let me just see. I'm just going to try changing these individually and see what happens, right? If I put a color correction in here. And then I take this map and I make this black, right? Basically, I'm just going to make everything black until we see which one it is that's controlling the overall color of the forest. That made it darker. That made it a bit darker. So it looks like they're each doing their own piece, right? And I guess this is the main one. Well, not the main one. This should, everything now should be black. Apart from the translucency, right? It's got that translucency color, so that color should be from this. Yeah, and that's black now. Okay. So you see how much of an effect just the translucency has on this. So what I want to do is just take these. Actually, I can just come along here. I'm going to take these and just bypass this color correction. And then I'm just going to drag and drop another one in. And I want there to be less yellow, right? So we can also make sure this composite I know I turned it off, but just to make sure it's not having an effect, we can do that. It's kind of weird that it's so yellow, right? And these off. Yeah, they don't have any effect at all. So there's no point in changing those. So, where were we? We're over here dealing with this. And I need to make this darker. And then in a minute I'll come back and I'll scatter the trees properly and just play with that until we get them looking good. So this gamma, let's make this 0.5. Actually, I'm going to make this 0.7. Make each of them 0.7, and I'm going to shift the hue up here to get rid of some of the yellow. And I'm just going to use that same one for each one because I want to do this quickly and get back to playing around with the trees. Alright, and I still think it's a little bit too bright. Actually, maybe this. What happens if I put this here into translucency color? Yeah, we get that. Okay, that's closer to what I'm after. And now if I take this and plug this into the diffuse, I think I'm going to leave it like that, and I think I'm going to plug this into translucency color as well. Alright, and I can always play around with this and mess around with this later, but I'm going to leave it at that for now. Okay, so let's go back to the trees. And looking at this, these ones here are still a little bit too dark, so just grab that material. That was this one here. So I'm just going to try pushing each one up by 0.3, let's say. Let's push this at 2. And this one here, 1.3. Thanks, dude. Yeah, I think that's 2. What I'm gonna do is just stop this rendering for a second. Just put this up at 2. And put this at 1.3. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this out because I haven't saved the scene for a while. Let's do save as 2. You know how much Max likes to crash. And when I'm rendering all the time, it's not such a good idea, right? Okay. I don't want to be suddenly Max crashes and I lose everything. That would be hell. Okay. So let it save. And then what we're going to do is I'm just going to move these trees all over to the side and just put a spline in where I want the trees to be, and then use forest to scatter them into the spline. I mean, the other way to do it is I could scatter them on the, onto the surface, onto the plane I have, and then use the spline to either include or exclude the trees. And that way, if the plane was like up and down, then they would still be there. But in this case, that's not the case in how I've set this up. So, move these off, just out of the camera. And then what I want to do is just create a spline here. Oops. Doing, and this, just put it how you want it to be. It does not need to be, all curved and everything else. You can always adjust it afterwards and move the verts around and so on. But all right, let's go. Forest Pro, and we're going to just assign it to this. And then go in here, and we've got this geometry, right? So we want custom object, and we're just going to start picking these. Actually, let me just delete this guy. I don't need to have 2 of these. Go back to the forest. You can just pick it here. Let me name these. This is grass. This is tree line. Just select this, and Actually, let's make the small one the first one. And then we're going to just come in and we got to add custom object, pick the next one, add custom object, pick the next one. Yeah, add custom object and pick the last one. All right, yeah, there's going to be a lot of questions I guess you're going to have, but it'll work out. All right, so I got geometry, areas. That's good. Distribution. We can leave this as dense. We can drop this down if needed. And then the main thing here is I've got no surface, obviously. Transform is the main one here, right? You need to enable this. Rotation enable. Scale enabled. And that's it. I mean, you can play around with these amounts, right? For now, for what I'm doing, like maybe they don't need to. You can see the top of the camera is here, right? So maybe I could bring those trees down a bit, make everything a little bit smaller. But I think that's good. And now if we just start the stream, start the rendering, start interactive. And we get an idea here of what's going on. And then we can come along and what I need to do, I'm just looking at the dense, I'm looking at their distribution. I can either increase this, right, or decrease this, sorry, to make it smaller. Let's try 80,000. I just want to increase the density here of these trees. And the other thing I can do is just come in here, and like I said, I can take this spline and just edit this. Just take these back 3, move them back a bit. Take these front ones and move these forward a bit, right? And all we're trying to do is just increase the density of the trees so it looks more like a tree line and not less like a, more like a forest going on there. Alright. And then for me, what I often want is close to the front. I'll often want the trees to be a bit smaller. I don't like to have them just a wall of massive trees. I mean, this is real, right? You do get this. But personally, I like to have them a bit smaller at the front. So if we just, again, select the tree line forest. And I always forget where this is. Geometry is in areas, density, fall off, scale. Here we go. Edit curve. So we're just going to add a point in here and just come here to move it around. Just drag that down there and see what happens, if anything. I don't think anything does because I haven't put any amount here, right? So let's see if I do 2000. Effect height only. Include. Let's just try this. There we go. Go back to 0. See all the squash trees. Okay, let's try 1000. I'm just going to pump this up a little bit. We know 10,000 is way too much, right? And if I push this over here, what happens? So we can see these becoming lower here in the foreground, right? And it gives more depth to the forest, which is why I like doing it. This is the problem here. See, these are so low. That's because this point here is so low. So you can just drag this point up a bit. That's basically saying when it hits the edge of the spline, it should be at 0. And so that's what's causing this squash tree effect. You know, here it's still also a bit much, so just pushing this up. Alright, and just make this smooth just because I prefer it to be smooth. I don't think it makes much difference, right? Your PC's going to explode. Yeah, this one works well. Alright, so that's that. And then one last thing is because, you know, you can see straight through here, through the forest, out the back. So obviously this looks completely unreal here, right? So what I'm going to do is take a couple of these trees, not the pine ones, but I'll take the other ones. And I'm just going to use them. I'm going to drop them down real low and make them smaller. And I'm just going to use them as shrubs. And I might change the color on them as well, right? So we can just do another spline. And we're just going to go like this. I find it funny because like things like this, obviously having trees in a straight line is kind of unreal. But you're never going to see it because forest is going to put them randomly in here. So, you know, it doesn't matter. I'm doing a lot of work in the material, but it doesn't really matter. You know, where you need to put work where it's important to put it. You know what I mean? So I don't want to be putting a whole bunch of work into something that's not really important. So, and this isn't important. Having this as a square box, I could do a rectangle, I'd still be happy. So we're just going to create another forest. And assign it to this. And I've put this down low just so the top of the trees just poke through, right? And I'll probably have to bring this spline up a bit, I imagine. And just call this shrubs. And areas, geometry, custom object. I'm just wondering. I'm going to do that one. And then add another custom object, pick this one. And we can see instantly what's happening, right? And I can bring this down to something like that. And now just if I render, like just because before I make a lot of changes, right, I just want to see what it looks like. So that's pretty good. I want these trees here, these shrubs in the foreground, obviously they're tree size, so they're just a bit too big, right? So what we're going to do is just handle that. And the way to handle it is I've got this scale here, right? Where is it? Here's the scale. So let's set this down to 50%. Let's set this down to 50%. And now I've got to just bring it up. So I can see it. Oops. Snap's not on. Just go front view. Z. Oh, it's the forest I'm bringing up. Okay, that's the problem. I need to bring up the spline. My bad. All right. So that's the shrubs. I'm going to bring this forward actually a bit, just go top. So I want them to just be slightly in front of most of the trees. And then just select them again because we need to make some variation and some changes to this. And let's refresh this. Shrubs, select. And the main thing is going to be transform again. Again, I'm just going to turn all of these on. Sometimes I turn this translation off because that likes to create more holes in it. And I don't want to have these holes. I don't want to see through there. Areas. I think these are a bit small actually now. Just go back to geometry. Let's put it back to 60. And like I said, I'm going to turn that translation off. And then I need to change the distribution, right? Because the distribution is just like a bit off, like what's happening here. And, you know, if I just isolate this, you can see there's these big gaps going on. Yeah, and this guy here, he's much too small, right? Like, do we see this guy even? No, he's underneath, right? So if I just isolate this again, because I'm not sure which one it is, so I imagine it's this one here. I think that's better. Yeah, now you can see both of them. And now if I come out of isolation mode, okay. So that's pretty much it, right? I'm going to just change that distribution, like I said. It's on dense. I'm going to change this down to 80,000 from 100,000. Just get a bit more going in there. I'll try 90. Yeah, I like having these like seeing in a little bit. Okay, cool. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. And then in the next stream, I'm going to add in a bunch of wild flowers in here. And get it so we, you know, can add some extra realism to the meadow here. And I'll look at adding in some extra details as well. But that's it. Yeah, and I'll render it out and I'll use that as the, I mean, I don't know, I can just stop this and just do a proper render. But it's going to take a little while. So yeah, I'll let this render. And then I'll use this as the, what's it called? You know, the little picture at the beginning of the YouTube video, just so you can see what it looks like. I just forget that this, I've got it on 2D pan zoom mode. Let me just select the camera. I'm just going to click and drag this up. Actually, I'm not going to do that. Control Z. Select camera. And I'm just going to come in here and do that. Alright. I think that's better. So like I said, I'll use this as a thumbnail. And yeah, that's it. You're very welcome. Thank you very much, guys. Alright. So I'm going to keep doing some more streams. And yeah, I'm not sure exactly when I'll do the next one, but I'll do them every so often, and then I'll take a look and figure out some sort of schedule when I can do these, so you know when I'll be going live. Okay, thanks a lot guys. Have a good weekend.